Facebook is on. It's working.
We're on. We're live.
You're going to talk about the Clinton food?
We're going
to pizza?
We're going to talk, not about pizza today.
No pizza talk today. We ready?
We are ready.
Okay, we'll start this. That, and welcome to Get Justice with Scott Elliot Smith.
Hi, Michael.
Hi, Scott. It's good to have you back.
It's been a couple weeks. I've been out of town. I've been in a third world country.
I was going to say you weren't just out of town. Like you said, you're going out of town, and then I see that you're like in a fantastic jungle
Well, it wasn't
area.
fantastic. It was Dominican Republic is a third world country, and I'll tell you what, you don't know how good you have it until you go to a place like that.
Had you been there before?
No, I had not.
So it was a real eye-opener.
We have such a great lifestyle in this country. It's unbelievable compared to third world countries. I mean, we don't know how good we have it. It's been great being back. It was fun to see. It's fun to visit. Fun to help. But it's great being back.
Well, I'm glad you're back because so many things have come up in the 2 weeks that you've been gone. But I think the first thing we have to touch on is the Uber issue that popped
What
up.
Uber issue?
Oh, the self-driving vehicle that killed somebody.
Oh, that minor incident.
That tiny thing. Now, here's why people don't know that we had this conversation off the air, because I had asked you about driverless cars, and it was just more of a conversation. And you had brought to my attention the kind of the layers of who's at fault for things if someone's driving. This brings up a very brand new issue of this driverless car that somebody manufactured to drive that way, and then somebody put on the street to make money. Who track that down for who's at fault?
Well, let's talk about the incident. And clearly this is not funny, but as has been reported, an Uber vehicle who was supposed to, or not who, the Uber vehicle that was supposed to be driverless had a driver. And apparently it was in the driverless mode, if for lack of a better phrase. And Uber, the vehicle itself, was supposed to be controlling the movement of the vehicle. Apparently struck a pedestrian, a woman, who was walking her bicycle outside a crosswalk and killed her. So the question immediately arises is, how did it happen? Why did it happen? And who's at fault?
Right.
Let's leave the pedestrian out of the equation for a minute, because that's not really central focus to this topic. Let's talk about the driverless or the self-driving vehicle. These components come generally in two areas. Number one, is it driver error? Is it user error? Is it a product liability problem because the vehicle, if it's in the self-driving mode, made a mistake, didn't sense the pedestrian? So you've got generally negligence on the part of the driver, if in fact he is doing anything or she is doing anything to cause the vehicle to move or not move. And then you have the automated system, which is a product liability system that could be at fault, and a combination of those two. And that's what's going to come down to in a case like that. Whoever gets this case, whoever is retained as a lawyer, has a lot of work to do.
Well, it is a landmark case. It's the first time it's ever happened.
No, it's not the first time. I have a friend in Cleveland that had this happen with a Tesla. And the boy was the boy was in the driver's seat. And apparently he was watching a video. And the vehicle was moving down the road, and a semi-tractor trailer pulled out in front of the vehicle. And there was a crash, and the boy died. And that case was litigated. It was resolved. And it's my understanding that's a confidential result. But I'm going to guess that there was payment made or remuneration or work done by Tesla to compensate the family of the boy. I think the truck played some part in the responsibility. So this isn't a landmark case, but this is what everybody can expect going forward.
I hadn't heard the Tesla one, but this is getting national news. Now that I'm looking at, and you're saying this has happened before, this is going to happen more and more. Especially when you see Elon Musk, who personally I love everything that guy's doing, but he's building these underground kind of roadways where you're kind of like go on this elevator or escalator, and it brings your car down, and it just zips you at
Put you in a
160
loop.
miles. Yeah. But my first thought was, if you have a driverless car and you're on that thing and it's just taken off, if something stops in the front and you don't have the ability to take over the vehicle that quickly, I mean, that could be massive. You're trusting that the technology is going to be there, and you're foregoing your own personal driving skill.
Well, you are. We'll look back in 50 years and go, boy, look at the primitive ages when we were in these vehicles. They didn't work out. The bugs on the computer system, the sensors weren't that good. They allowed the drivers to get involved, who created driver error that contributed to the collision. So many things are going to be ironed out. And this is the phase, this is the growing phase of technology. I think eventually we'll be in the future with driverless vehicles like we see in the sci-fi movies that we watch.
But that was the part that we talked about off the air, that it was an interesting conversation, because you can take this down several different paths, because you know this like the back of your hand. But who is at fault? Again, if there's an accident in a driverless vehicle, I still have to have insurance, right? That's not going to change. Someone has to be insured for that vehicle.
Well, everybody should be insured, and if it's the company, if it's Uber, if it's the corporation, they may be self-insured, which means we don't buy insurance. If there's a claim against us, if there's a judgment against us, we pay out of our pocket because we have so much money, which big corporations often do.
It just, when I'm thinking about if someone was operating this, whether it was remotely or they were in the vehicle or whatever, and it's in self-driving mode, the first thing I thought of, mainly because of this show and talking to you all the time, was who is insured? Who is at fault?
Well, the fault is going to be, at least from the little that I know, 3 different ways. The pedestrian may have some fault. The driver may have some fault. The company may have some fault. And then when you get into the company having fault, they're going to say, well, it's the technology. So you're going to maybe join another 1 to 10 different companies who all contributed to this technology that was supposed to have stopped the vehicle from striking and killing a person. I mean, that's what it's supposed to be about, right? Whether this woman was in the crosswalk or not, my understanding, general understanding, is if there is a sense that something is in front of you that you can strike, that the vehicle will brake itself, will stop, and so there is not this collision. So
yeah, when I read it, I was thinking it was kind of like the GPS maps. You know, it would say there's a crosswalk here, and if you, as a person, are kind of deviating from where you're supposed to go, maybe that's how it happened, but that's just supposition on my part. I just like to put the conspiracy theory out there a little bit. We got to have a little bit on this show.
There you go. It's good. But this is hard. I mean, this is a lawyer's job. You know, if the estate of this woman comes to me and says, represent the estate for my mother or my wife who was killed, there's a lot of work to do. And the first thing we have to figure out is get as much information, investigation, send out an accident reconstructionist, hire a technology expert, maybe more than one, depending on the field you may need it. You need all kinds of work, and it's going to be very expensive. And it has to be done. But that's how you prove your case, and that's how you gain in front of a jury the right to recover, to show that someone else was at fault, that the technology didn't work, that the Uber driver wasn't doing what he should have been doing. Maybe there was driver error, and maybe the woman had some fault too. Not sure.
Well, this kind of dovetails into, we had a situation where someone had called me about their wife had been in an accident, you know, and then they didn't listen. When you brought up that's a lawyer's job, this kind of perfectly transitions that this person's in an accident and goes ahead and goes to a chiropractor and exhausts their medical insurance, and after the fact, I don't feel right, now jump on board, right? So as a lawyer, you're telling people when that happens, call a lawyer immediately, right? Not wait until after, because we've talked about in my case where the insurance agent is probably going to run out to that family from the Uber incident, and here's your check. We want to make you whole.
Well, let's back up a second. Yeah, you've touched on quite a few issues there.
I always do.
Yeah, as you do, which is fine. But as in the Uber case, as in any car collision case, thinking you can do this on your own is a mistake. It's a mistake. There's too many working parts. Insurance adjusters, not agents, insurance adjusters are hired and trained to tell you something they want to tell you, whether it's right, whether it's wrong, whether it is consistent with the law, is irrelevant to what they tell you. They tell you what they want to tell you, what they've been trained to tell you, to minimize your recovery. That's what insurance adjusters do.
Is that because they have a bias, which is something we covered a couple weeks ago, talking about juries? They have a bias to protect their company, correct?
Everybody's got a bias, but these individuals are specifically trained to say certain things and to do certain things and to deny people certain things and to leverage people and to squeeze them and to stress them out so they take less or take nothing and go away. This is no arena for people that don't know what they're doing. So you're in a bad car collision, you need to consult a lawyer as soon as possible. In the uber factual situation, there's grieving. They're not thinking about a lawyer right now. They're not thinking about a lawsuit right now. They're grieving over the death of a loved one, and that's going to happen. But after that settles somewhat, if you will, you need to get a lawyer. At least talk to somebody, whether you retain a lawyer or not. Find the lawyer in your community who knows what they're doing, who does this, who limits their practice to this type of law. Not everybody can do it. Everybody can say they do it, but unless they have proven results, and do your research, unless they have proven results, anybody says they can do it. But it's difficult. Even lawyers who have done a little bit of it usually don't know what they're doing to the extent they need to know what they're doing, because there's so much going on in the law that it changes, and you have to be on top of it all the time.
But and you have to have courtroom experience, right? Because we've talked about in the past, we have a lot of what I termed as mills. I know that you don't look at it that way, but it's like a settlement mill. Come in, we're going to get a third of this anyway, so let's go ahead and get this done so you can get your money and get on your way, right? Versus you might have long-term injuries, you might have long-term issues that if you take that check from that insurance company, it's over, right?
It is, and you sign a release. It's for all general purposes, it is over. But there are law firms that take every case, minor or substantial. We don't. I take the cases that the people need the most help. I advise people all the time on what they should consider doing when they call me on the telephone, and we do it for free. It's called pro bono.
Well, you just did it. You just did it for a friend of mine.
I just did it for a friend of yours. And
it's not
we'll
a friend of mine anymore now.
Well, no.
We wasted 20 minutes, Mark.
But the point is, this is difficult work. From property damage settlement, people run into issues where, hey, look, I borrowed money on this car, and they're offering me $10,000, but I owe $14,000. Right. What am I going to do? Well, you're underwater, so to speak. If you didn't have gap insurance, if it's a lease vehicle, or you pay too much for your vehicle, you could be in a mess. You could have a problem on your hands. You could have the car paid up to the amount of $10,000, which is the fair market value of the vehicle, but you may owe $4,000 more on it.
Right.
There may not be anything I can do, but you have to look into it because there may.
But it's still, someone still has to be proactive and make the call. You have to
absolutely.
Find out that you don't have any, I don't want to say that you don't have any options, but that, in the situation of the friend that called me on Friday when you were out of the country, the way he described it was like, oh, it's not an open and shut thing. Mm-hmm. But they already took action. They went to a chiropractor. They went through that treatment and then got released. So now it's kind of over. So your pain and suffering is kind of null and void.
Well, you bring up an interesting point. I did speak to someone that you had referred to me, and we spoke at length. It didn't turn out I could help them because they were pretty far down the road and then made some decisions on their own. But chiropractors may do, and in fact do, a lot of good work. But in terms of injuries from a car collision, you're better off with an MD, not a DC. And why do I say that? Well, I would advise anybody who's hurt in a car collision to go see their primary care physician and get referred to an orthopedic physician, an MD or DO, who specializes in this type of injury.
Because your internal issues are also a
well, it depends on your symptoms, but the point of the story is if you've got a joint issue, for instance, a neck or a shoulder or a hip or an ankle injury, you're better off with an orthopedic physician because they carry more weight in terms of credibility. I look at this as a lawyer to what a jury may eventually hear down the road. If this case can't get settled and we have to try the case, and I enjoy trying cases, a jury is probably, at least statistically, is going to be more in touch and believe an orthopedic physician, an MD or a DO, versus a chiropractor. Because a chiropractor can be cross-examined and can be made to look as if they're not as qualified as an MD, as a DO, as an orthopedic physician. That's why I say, look, you need to go someplace where you can probably get the best help, because chiropractors are limited. They can only do so much. And get that treatment. And stay with those doctors and do what they advise you to do. Pick the one you want, anyone you want, and stay in the field.
And if they're your primary care physician, they have the history or record, so they can show you this is where they were before the accident and then after.
Well, they can if you've been seeing a doctor regularly, but a primary care physician is sort of the quarterback. If they really take the time and do what they need to do, whether it's an internist or a family doc, they're the quarterback that gets you to the specialist, whether it's a neurologist, orthopedic physician, orthopedic surgeon, and on you go. I mean, there's so many different specialties out there, but that's the doctor who's supposed to get you there. That's the reason you go there first. They can do a little bit for you, but they can get you to where you need to go if they can't help you.
Right. We're going to have to take a break here because we are going to get into the uninsured motorist that's in the newspaper this week. You are listening to Get Justice with Scott Elliot Smith. I didn't want to stop you, but I was like, we got to talk about this.
You got 10 more minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, I know. You go off on tangents.
I do that to give you plenty to talk about.
Oh, I got plenty.
I know, but I'm saying I'm giving you the everyman question. Yeah.
Okay.
So we're going to come back, and then we're going to go uninsured motorists, and then you can hit that.
Okay.
All right, Juan, when you're ready.
All set?
Ready to rock.
Just wanted to give you time to take a drink of water. Okay. Welcome back to Get Justice with Scott Elliot Smith.
Scott, before we went to break, I teased that we were going to talk about uninsured motorists. And while you were out of the country, I had this ready to go. And then you walk in all excited to tell me in the newspaper today it's talking about uninsured motorists. So technically I was more prepared while you were gone, but you have something to show.
Well, this is something we talked about often. And I'll beat this horse to death because it's important. And that is, do you have adequate insurance on your vehicle? It's really that simple. Most people don't know. They go, well, I go to my agent and I said I need insurance. The law says I have to have insurance. And he gives me insurance, so I'm covered. I got full coverage. I'm good to go. And they walk out the door and they don't know what they have. So, in the paper today, the local fish wrap talked
all
about...
9 pages of the Columbus Dispatch.
They talk about the number or percentage of drivers who are not insured. And these are the people that, if you're listening to this, you need to be aware of. People that drive that don't have insurance are more likely to be less responsible drivers, which means they're more likely to cause collisions. And you may be next. And their lottery for getting hit by an uninsured driver is much better than the Powerball.
Well, especially when you look at the percentages. When I pulled these numbers a couple weeks ago, I thought this can't be right. And now the Dispatch confirms it. Because we have said, I don't know, for at least 50 straight shows that you need insurance. It's a law. You can't get around it. And then the number is over 12% of motorists in Ohio don't have it. And I thought, that's a crazy number.
It is crazy.
To think more than 10% of people driving every single day don't have insurance. And those people could end up hitting you. And again, while you were gone, another person, their daughter got rear-ended by somebody without insurance. And the person just skipped court, didn't even come. Because they don't have insurance, so that they're going to get caught one way or another. But I can't believe the amount of people that don't have insurance. It's
amazing. According to this article, 12.4% of drivers don't have car insurance. And that's just liability insurance. So that means you, to protect yourself from those guys, needs to have what's called uninsurance and underinsurance. And that means if someone hits you that doesn't have insurance, you're still covered. That's good. You need that. Or if they don't have enough, they have minimal limits. You get underinsurance, which goes with uninsurance when you buy it. And you're covered. You need at least $100,000. $100,000 insurance and liability, $100,000 in uninsurance, and underinsurance at a minimum.
That's
and it's
your floor.
not that expensive. It sounds like when I say $100,000, oh, I can't afford. No, $100,000 worth of insurance doesn't cost you $100,000. It costs you much, much less.
Right.
So you shop your insurance to all the different insurance companies out there. Go to an independent agent. Tell them your circumstances. You tell them what you want. Don't let them tell you what you want. Most agents don't know. They're in a situation, they're told what to sell. You increase those profit margins for the insurance companies. My goodness, they don't have enough money.
Well, as everyone that listens to this show knows, you love insurance companies. I mean, that's the one thing that's a given on this show.
Necessary evil.
Yeah.
Insurance is a necessary evil.
But when you think about 12% of those people, or 12.4, you have to have underinsurance. I mean,
Well,
that's
because
a
they're
must.
out there and they're driving and they could hit you, and they can cause serious injury. They can kill you. So, according to the article, Ohio has 7.8 million licensed drivers as of April 2016. All right. So, what's 10% of 8 million?
Oh, 800.
800,000. That's 800,000 people in cars driving that
In
don't
the
have
state,
insurance in
every
the
single
state.
day.
800,000. That's a lot of drivers.
That is insane. Well, if you break down, Columbus is, 2.3 million people in this population, so they've got to have at least 150 of those. 150, not 150 total, but 150,000,
Yeah.
you would think.
If the averages are consistent.
Yeah. So when you're seeing the accidents on the you've made me so hyper aware of insurance. Every time I see something, I'm starting to put together the crime scene, and I'm like, that person's at fault because they rear-ended them, and then they pushed them in the median, and then all of a sudden I'm like, I don't know what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. But you can start to see this, and the thing that I'm thinking of is, I hope they all have underinsurance. Because when you get in those chain collisions, or there's 2 or 3 cars, the amount of damages that are done to those vehicles, and then everybody, you would hope that they don't just settle if they're injured. But a lot of those accidents are going to be a Grange or State Farm, or someone's going to run out there, and here's your check,
Or tell you that you're not entitled. A lot of times in those cases, the insurance company for the at-fault party, if they are insured, one of the first things they're saying now, it's becoming a trend, is, wasn't our fault. Wait a minute, I'm sitting at a light, I'm in my car, and they hit me from behind at 50 miles an hour. How is it not their fault? Not their fault.
Oh, that's a good answer.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's like what Mom used to say, because why,
why?
Mom?
Yeah.
Because I said so.
Right.
Well, this is the bully on the playground again, which insurance companies are. They're bullies, and they tell you, not our fault. What are you going to do about it? Well, you have to. You're forced to go see a lawyer. Now, litigation is a bad thing. Trial lawyers, insurance companies have made sure of this. Trial lawyers are bad. Trial lawyers just are greedy. They just want your money. What insurance companies are forcing you to go to a lawyer. Because if they tell you in a scenario when you're sitting in a stoplight in your car, minding your own business, and you're struck from behind, and the insurance company tells you, for the at-fault driver, it wasn't our fault.
But you don't.
What do you know? What do you do? Your choices are limited. Go away, absorb your own losses, or go see a lawyer.
But that was my question: is they don't say it's not my fault to you.
No. Well, sometimes they do. And the easy thing on that, Michael, is when they come to me is, I understand that. I'm used to that kind of, let's be nice, bull crap.
Right.
Okay? So what you do, you just turn around and you file a lawsuit. Well, that gives ammunition to insurance companies. Look at the trial lawyers filing all the lawsuits. Well, we have to. We don't want to file a lawsuit. We like to settle these cases for our clients fairly, evenly. But insurance companies force you into that position where we have to file lawsuits because insurance companies go, no, not our guy's fault. We're not paying. What are you going to do about it? Well, that's what you do about it. You file a lawsuit.
But they're doing that to the consumer that's saying, I have this claim, before they have a lawyer, right? So it's basically, I'm going to chase you off.
Yeah.
As a consumer, I would be, and again, we discussed my issue. I didn't know at the time that there was anything you could do. So now knowing about that people will take up this fight for you, especially against insurance companies, I don't understand why more people don't have. You've got your primary care physician. You've got somebody that's done your will.
There's a lot of reasons why. There's a lot of reasons. People say I'm too busy. I can't afford to take time off to go see my doctor. I don't have good insurance. I can't afford the copays, deductible. These are all legitimate reasons, but there's ways around them. And I tell people that you need to go. You need to follow a protocol of getting the treatment, of taking the time. You have to invest in your own case. You have to invest in the fact that You are out. You are out because someone else caused you to be out, and you are entitled to be made whole. And if you can't do it on your own, and most people can't, find a good lawyer. Find a lawyer who does this, a lawyer that has the experience. I have 35 years in this. I have great verdict results. I have great results. I have great success rates because we don't cut corners. We don't run you through and run you out. Everybody that I represent, I think of as personal to me, that I treat them as I would a good friend. And a lot of them become good friends because I take the time and we'll get it right and we'll make sure they're not screwed over.
Yeah, people can go to your website. Why don't you tell people the website so they can see? I mean, it's got...
What is it?
Your history. sestriallaw.com. I was trying to get you to plug it. It seems weird when I plug it. But okay, we got it in there. sestriallaw.com. But I think you can see the articles of the verdicts you've got, received for people and the work you've done. I mean, you've kind of put your litany of everything you've done on that website for people to look at. So again, if you're doing research and the first thing is, we'll get your settlement fast or we don't get paid until you get paid, that would not be my highlight. It would be, are you willing to go to trial, and how much trial experience do you have?
Well, do the insurance companies respect you, and will they pay you more? I mean, I can pretty much tell you insurance companies pay me more for my clients than they do most other lawyers because they know I'm going to go to trial, and they know I get good results. I mean, that's who you need to go to. That's where I'd go to.
Right.
Who's going to give me the best results?
Right. We're out of time for this week. You want to leave anybody with parting wisdom?
Oh, like I had before, check your car insurance. If you don't have uninsurance and underinsurance, get it. Get it at least $100,000. Check on umbrellas. They're cheap. Get them up to $1 million. It could be helping you in the long run and your family, too.
Thank you for listening to Get Justice with Scott Elliot Smith.
Nice.
You got to charge your phone up. It's on this low battery mode here.
Well, we got through.